Folks, I am online way too much on top of watching so many TV and movies these days. But there's one person I found scrolling Instagram, and I have loved everything that he has said about the TV and film industry. You can find him online as like Producer Patrick. His name is Patrick Caligiuri. He is a seasoned producer, and he has worked on so many unscripted television shows like Amazing Race, Big Brother, Naked and Afraid, my favorite, and American Idol. So his recent insights, though, about the evolving landscape of the television and film industry, particularly the decline of traditional cable and the rise of digital platforms, that's really what I find fascinating and what I wanted to have a discussion about with you guys today, because we talk so much about this. I said I'm watching more television than I've ever watched in my life, yet we're seeing all of these reports that there's a decline in all of these things. And in Los Angeles, things aren't being shot anymore. So anyways, without further ado, Patrick Caligiuri, welcome to the show.
Ryan, thanks for having me here. We've been going back and forth,
and I'm
finally here. Yeah.
I want to get into your career, obviously, but I want to just start with an article we had just got hit with. We were talking about this, was that Apple TV, a streaming platform, is losing $1 billion a year.
Yeah.
How is that possible? Because we know Apple as Severance, Ted Lasso, The Morning Show. How are they losing $1 billion a year?
Because it's all gone to streaming. And that's been sort of the big problem that we've been facing for the last 2 years is, and this started probably about 2016 when Netflix came on the scene and they're like, hey, we're going to make streaming everything. And everybody's like, yeah, okay. And then all of a sudden COVID hit, right?
Yeah.
So that injects a steroid into the industry because all of a sudden now everybody's sitting at home watching TV.
Yeah.
That killed Quibi because Quibi's like, I bet everybody's going to want to watch on their phones. And then all of a sudden everybody's in their living room.
Quibi, what he's talking about, David Katzenberg, who, icon. Icon in the industry. It was like short form content for your phone.
Yes.
For people with busy lifestyles, and all of a sudden with COVID, we didn't have busy lifestyles.
No, exactly. So they were ahead of their time. They were right. They were just at the wrong timing. They launched March 2020. And now you wonder why. And then they're like, why is the Bigfoot, the app that makes your face look like Bigfoot, why is that getting more downloads than Quibi? But what happened was streaming came on the scene. Netflix was killing it. And then everybody else looked at Netflix and were like, well, shit, we're behind the 8 ball. So Disney's like, fast forward. Warner Brothers, Max, let's fast forward. Everything shifted to the streaming model. And they went ahead, go fast and break things, as they say in Silicon Valley, but they didn't know what they broke. And they broke Humpty Dumpty. They broke a revenue model that worked perfectly fine for 70 years. And when all this happened and all these shattered pieces kind of fell to the floor, and then you have AI coming on the scene, and then you have these writer strikes, which was kind of a direct result of going to streaming because all of a sudden, probably around 2022, Netflix came out and they're like, hey, with this subscription-only thing, we're not making any money. And then everybody was like, yeah, me too, I'm not making any money. But a lot of these legacy companies like Paramount, which owns CBS and all the Viacom cable channels, Comedy Central, MTV, all of a sudden at the same time, it was a perfect storm. Cable just said, we're not making money anymore. Our demographic's aging out. Nobody's watching cable. Nobody's subscribing to cable. So that's starting to die. And then you have streamers now switching to live programming, like the Tyson fight, the Jake Paul Tyson fight. That just proved Netflix can do live programming. So they're on deck to do the Super Bowl next. So everything that was keeping broadcast television alive, like award shows and live sports, that's everything that these traditional broadcasts, CBS, NBC, ABC, they're still holding on to live sports, but now that live is going to streaming. So now these legacy companies, they're trying to make money with streaming, but they also are tied down and anchored down by these traditional broadcasting and cable networks that aren't profitable anymore. So nobody's making money. And unfortunately, the whole industry is suffering because of this.
Yeah, so you speak from this as an industry perspective, right? So as a viewer perspective, sometimes we don't know where the hell we are are or what we're supposed to look at. And I was raised on ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox had just been created, and then you had CW, WB, all of these things, rise of cable, all of these things. And then you get into these streaming platforms, and I think still people don't understand. Like you watch your Bravo potentially on Peacock because NBC Universal, that's under the umbrella. On Max, which used to be HBO, and then HBO Max, and then Max. That's why all of a sudden you have like these prestigious TV shows like Succession, but then now on the home screen you have them right next to Dr. Pimple Popper, which is a TLC show under the same banner. Paramount Plus, CBS company, so we can find our CBS over at that streaming service. And then now you hear all of these discussions of, well, these companies need to absorb each other, right? Is that Apple TV needs to buy Paramount or something like that. But the industry is losing as a whole, but is the audience losing as a whole in respect as well?
The audience is becoming more saturated, unfortunately. You got to remember, like, what was broadcast, what was media 40 years ago? It was 3-4 networks, right? Now you also have this transition of everybody going to social media as well. TikTok.
How do we compete with TikTok? I say I watch TikTok probably like right up to the amount I watch television these days, which is insane. So how do we compete with that and also shorter attention spans?
There's no competition. And I think everybody's trying to figure out this world. And it's true. It's like, that's why you see these legacy media companies struggling, like George Stephanopoulos. They're like, sorry, George, we're not going to give you any more of your $30 million salary because Sally in Des Moines, Iowa, who does makeup tutorials, is pulling the exact same ratings that you are.
Well, that's the thing is that I try to retrain my way of thinking of like, am I just a dinosaur and I fell in love with late night TV, through Letterman and Carson and all of these people. And, even that doesn't exist in the same format. I mean, Kimmel, Fallon just took one of his nights away in terms of like they're going to air a repeat.
Down 4 nights.
Right, down 4 nights to 5. And that thing is you're watching full-blown talk shows on TikTok or the rise of podcasting in its own way. And so, I mean, the overall question that we're not going to answer in this first 5 minutes is, well, where do we go from here? Do I just have to break my way of thinking or the audience's way of thinking of the old way is never going to be back?
Right. And I think that's the problem that we're facing now is everybody's trying to go back to this pre-2019 model that now it's like trying to jam a square peg in a round hole. It doesn't work. I mean, the way the industry was structured, it was a Picasso painting. It didn't look pretty, but it worked. It was all pieces that were kind of pieced together. But what's interesting is as media has evolved, and it's always evolved, right? We've gone from silent films to talking films, radio to television. It does get replaced, but in our lifetime, really nothing has happened in 40 years. Cable came on the scene in the early 80s. I was like a toddler, and nothing happened. It was perfectly, and then it worked that way. But what's interesting is I don't see media the same way as we see it, the way we grew up with it, because the rules aren't the same anymore. Who's to say a movie has to be horizontal? It can be vertical. Who's to say it's a short film anymore when it's just a film? Is it 20 minutes? Is it 90 minutes? But the way I see it, it's actually breaking into 2 different types of forms.
And what are those forms?
The forms are your focus. I see it as light focus and strong focus. And what I mean is like light focus is I'm waiting for the subway and I'm just going to, go through Instagram reels and scroll. Light, mindless, I'm not going to start I'm not going to start watching White Lotus on a subway platform, right? I'm going to watch that when I get home and I'm in my bed and I got into the bathroom and I got my popcorn and I'm ready. And that's that's a more attention focus. So I really think it's really a matter, not as much as we look at the media, it's like, well, that's a TV show and that's a social media piece.
We need to look at it as focus.
Focus, exactly. Like a film in a movie theater, I would say is the ultimate church. That's the cathedral, right? That's where I have to put my phone away and you have I'm in a dark room with a live audience. And that is
But Patrick, I love how you say church, and that's how I always viewed it. But nowadays we're realizing that people just don't want to go to church. People don't even understand the concept of that religion anymore. We have now a generation of people that do not appreciate the ritual of going to a movie theater.
I would disagree, actually.
Please.
And the reason I disagree is there's so many of our generation. You know, I'm going to take it you're an elder millennial.
I'm 23. Sure.
Yeah. You look 23. I was going to say that was on the tip of my tongue. But there's so many in our generation. It's like, well, Gen Alpha, Gen Z, they want that. And like, we don't know what they want. We say what we think they want, but we never actually go and talk to them.
Yeah.
So I actually went down to Chapman. And
Chapman
I was like,
University.
University. And I was like, I want to take your, and my buddy works there. He's a professor. And I was like, I need 30 of your students. And I just want to do a sit down round robin with them and actually, hear from the horse's mouth. And
this would be a great episode of Naked and Afraid, by the way. If you had them all naked and a focus group, solid episode.
Solid episode. Plus, I don't think they would survive too well. Film students from Chapman and Orange County. I don't think they would do good in the Ecuadorian rainforest. But it would be interesting to watch. But what they said was actually really, really intriguing. They said, I would love to go to a movie theater. That generation is so starved for connection. Yeah, you got to remember, this is a generation that started with a phone in their face since the moment they were crawling. So they've been exposed to media so much that they're oversaturated with it. But what they're missing is community. They look to connect with other people. Where do you do that? Where can you do that? You can do that in a movie theater. But they were like, I would go to the movie theater, but I'm a college student and it's $25 a ticket to go see a movie. And then I brought up, I was like, well, it was $3.50 in 1999, and I may have been out $9 after concession. And they looked at me like I was a crazy person.
Yeah.
Like I was the old man talking, gas was 25 cents back in the 60s. And I'm like, shit, I'm not that guy, but like.
Oh, yeah. I mean, no, I've noticed even with AMC, like, you're upwards of $23 a ticket at the Grove. Uh-huh. And then when you hit concessions, if you have a date, you're looking at $80 or $90.
It's $100. It's $100 for two people to go to the movie. So that has to change. And we've talked about within the industry about like tier systems. Like, okay, maybe the Marvel movie, that one is $25. But if you're going to go see like, a independent, $5 million film, you should be paying like $350 to go see that. Like, why do I have to pay $25 to see?
But at the rate we're going, aren't we kind of just like decimating the independent film market as it is? I mean, you had something like Anora, who obviously huge, best picture, it's streaming on Hulu right now, you guys. Yeah. But we have this film, and I think, what was the final U.S. gross? Were we like nearing $60 million for that?
Right.
And then, in-game, we're at like $2.53 billion.
Right.
But if people aren't going to the movie theaters, aren't we pricing out independent film completely in some ways?
I don't think so. I think really we're actually going to start seeing the renaissance of an indie movement, because what's been happening is the mainstream studios, and no fault to them, they're turning into corporations.
Yeah.
The people that used to be running movie studios aren't running movie studios. Storytellers aren't running movie studios. It's people that look at the bottom line, dollars and cents, but they don't understand their product. They don't understand it's an art form. They don't understand it's fluid.
And that's always that's never changed. I think that's been that conversation's been around for a while, even before the rise of streaming of the suits and the creatives.
Right. But even the suits used to be creative suits. Like, and I'll use the Cheers example. Okay, Cheers, when it first came out, the first season was bad. Even the same with Seinfeld. Okay, but NBC had a network executive that was like,
believe
this is, my gut says this is going to find its audience. Be patient, it'll find it. And they did. But you look at a Cheers and a Seinfeld and you try to put it in today's ecosystem, it wouldn't last 3 episodes.
Yeah, they would cancel it immediately.
They would cancel it. And that's the thing, is like, they're like, if it's not making money immediately, it's horrible. So let's make sure we run everything through the algorithm, because AI is going to tell us exactly what the audience wants. It's so predictive. But then again, if AI was so wonderful and so great, why are movies still bombing? Why is there a Joker 2?
I mean, by the way, the Joker, we just had the announcement this week that Village Roadshow,
collapsed.
Which is an iconic film production company. They did The Matrix. They did all of these great films that I grew up.
The Lego Movie.
I mean, but big budget films that made a lot of money, and they bet on Matrix Revolutions, which was, I think, during the pandemic, it was part of the Max deal, where they were first running movies that should be in the theaters on Max.
Right.
And then Joker 2 was an insane bomb.
Yes.
That they spent $200 million on.
Actually, Village Roadshow didn't do Joker 2.
They did the first Joker. The one that was successful.
The first Joker. They were actually kind of like, hey, actually, Joker 2 was not our fault. But it just goes to show that still these predictive analytics, they don't work, and there's something about the artistic form of media that really only the storytellers truly understand and I think get. That's why so many are on the sidelines going like, wow, you greenlit. Look at how many sequels are coming out. Disney just announced they're doing Coco 2.
Yeah, that's it. It's only sequels, reboots,
prequels,
franchises,
anything with intellectual property, IP. No original stories. So, but the thing is about storytelling is audiences don't know what they want until they get it. The audiences didn't know they wanted a Ghostbusters until Ghostbusters showed up.
So we're having to invest, or we're having to convince people that are behind these corporations to invest in a feeling.
And they don't do that.
And
they're like, no,
that's not what.
There's no way. You can't look at that on a spreadsheet.
And so you have these now, huge conglomerates, or even we were just talking about Amazon just purchased the rights to the James Bond franchise. Right. So Conan O'Brien made a great joke during the Oscars about finding the next James Bond. And now Jeff Bezos is involved in potentially casting decisions. I mean, who knows?
And he kind of looks like a Bond villain. It's kind of like it's like he all he needs is the hairless cat.
He's going to give it to his buddy Elon Musk. No, I just find this really interesting and potentially scary. But what gives me hope is what you told me about the Chapman students, is that they are starved for connection.
Yes.
And we get that connection, I guess, through a TikTok app, but we're looking to do more in-person things.
And I'll take it one step forward. So I also asked one student, and he eloquently put this. I said, as somebody who, from the minute you're walking, you have a screen in front of your face, how does your generation process kind of all the media consumption you do? And he said it's the same as eating fast food. He goes, when you look at Instagram, you're looking at the most perfect version of somebody, right? It's their best vacation. It's, their best photos. It's artificial to an extent because it's a facade, right? It's not their real life. So my generation, compare that to eating fast food every day. What's that going to do to your body? After a while, your body's going to be like, I crave something organic. I crave something that's nutritious. And so he goes, that's why my generation really is so attracted to authenticity, to the real thing, to the real genre.
I always say this even in terms of reality television, which I watch so much of, and I know you work in, but I'm talking on the Real Housewives front. The audiences are very savvy these days. We can tell when we're seeing something real, or even in terms of like Scandal is like an example that really popped off 2 years ago.
Right.
We were like, whoa, wow, this is... You invest in this show for 9 seasons and this is what it's all about. You're investing in this completely traumatic situation.
Right.
And I think the audience, for the most part, felt this is something real here.
Yes.
Because we have seen so many examples of I can watch a reality show and go, oh my God, this is like a filler episode.
Yes.
This is so produced.
Right.
This is very... And it really is interesting that we are more in tune with these forms because we are so used to them.
And what's funny, because you say that, and as somebody who started out in unscripted and worked 20 years in it, we've seen them over the course of time. Reality TV in the early 2000s was the Wild West. You didn't know what the fuck you were going to get.
I hold your point really quick. I just want to say one of the credits that I noticed on Patrick's IMDb page, it's a little show that a lot of you guys might not know about, but there was a show on CBS called Kid Nation. And Kid Nation, you guys, to me, is an iconic benchmark. Just in terms of reality television, where CBS went wild, and the whole concept of the show was giving kids control of a small Western town without any parental supervision. And I've talked about this show before. I remember watching it when it was first run. It only lasted 1 season. You worked on Kid Nation.
I was an associate producer, so I was.
Don't
Don't
try to get yourself out of Kid Nation. You worked on Kid Nation in a sense.
I did.
But those wild ideas.
Yeah. That was Lord of the Flies, and they made it
really
let's make it a reality show.
You saw kids of I've got the conch.
And and they cut chickens' heads off, and that was, I think, where CBS was like, well, we may have crossed the line a little bit. But to be fair, there was a crew of 300 people there. There were camp counselors that were always the kids were well taken care of.
I know, but I do wonder sometimes the crew, about day 10, they're like, what the F are we doing here? This is going crazy. They're having to kill a chicken to feed themselves.
No comment.
Anyways, back to what we were talking about noticing something real in the audiences in reality television.
So as reality television progressed, and kind of getting into this sort of network overlook, reality television became like, well, what are we going to see? If you want to sell this show, this reality show, well, what's going to be in the episode? It was like, but the whole point of reality TV is we don't know what's going to happen in the episode,
Yeah.
And there became more of a mandate to explain what the episode was. And then you're like, well, how can you do, and it was for a real long time, it was really hard to do this tightrope where I can't promise something, but if I say something, they better see it in a way.
Yeah.
So the reality TV, to your point, it started becoming more and more produced because the networks didn't want to be, they want to become more and more risk averse. They wanted to know what was going to happen on the show. But there's different, and reality is such a blanket term.
Because by the way, you worked on some of Amazing Race. Amazing Race to me is ethical reality television.
Yeah.
That is something it is a competition series.
We set up the maze and the rats run through it.
But you also meet great people. You highlight amazing characters.
Mm-hmm.
It's not housewives flipping tables and throwing glasses. It's a little bit of a cut above, or even American Idol, where there's an actual talent behind it.
Right.
It's not the Kardashians where the talent becomes like, well, it's just us.
Well, the shows I typically do, and I could go home and sleep at night because because reality TV producers have the worst reputation.
I wonder about that on Housewives. I'm like, did this person go home and just be like, what am I doing with my life?
We are up there with dentists. I don't even tell people on airplanes that I'm a reality show producer because I get two reactions. One is like, I hate reality TV, and then the second reaction is like, I always wanted a show about me, and I'm like, no, you need therapy. You don't need a reality show.
They're pitching their own show.
Yeah, it's just so I just tell
it's like taxi cab confessions on a plane.
So I just tell people I sell insurance, and then everybody's like, oh, and then I'm like, yeah, and then I put on my ear pods, and then that's the end of the conversation. But it gets, so the reality shows that I always did, there was always a tangible element. People knew what they were getting into.
Yeah.
Meaning like reality, like The Amazing Race, I know I'm competing for $1 million. Big Brother, I know I'm competing for $500,000. I know there's a game here. I know what the strategy of the games are. I know what to expect when I see it. Even Naked and Afraid, I know the challenge is I drop my pants and I have to survive in this jungle for 30 days.
I know I'm naked, yes.
I know I'm naked. I know what I'm... So to me, I'm like, okay, they know what they signed up for. But then you get into dating shows and then all of a sudden everything becomes more gray because love is not a tangible item. It's not money. It's not a challenge that you know exactly what the directive is. It's anybody's game. So that takes a different type of producer who wants to get in that game of convincing people they're in love or
It must get really intense to deal with all of these people and to take their phones away and to put that, or even Love Is Blind. You're putting them in these pods.
100%.
And all of a sudden, they're so primed to that's the goal. We got to find love. So you're allowing all of these really weird emotions not to be messed with, but to be open to.
Yeah.
And it is interesting is that, for me, anybody that agrees to be on one of these shows, I'm already you're immediately suspect. Not, but not like Survivor. And for some reason, those are holy grail for me. But if you agree to go on The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, I already think you're there for the wrong reasons. Right. Already.
And a lot of times the sad part is you tend to see the same contestants from another show reapply.
Oh, dude, that's the thing now. Now we have a multiverse, an extended universe of reality television.
I think Boston Rob's the only one who can officially say he's done it and made a career out of it.
Or Parvati, or that's why the Traders succeeded because they found a way to do it well, where you can bring all of these different genres of reality
also
into one house.
Great game, though. Great game.
Exactly.
And it's all about, for the shows like that, it's about the game.
But it also touches something that when we grew up watching these people, it reminds us of a feeling that we once had. When I was watching Boston Rob on Survivor, man, I loved some of those moves. And it reminds you of this time where you were sitting in front of a television when life might be a little simpler and you're like, the dude's still doing it and he's got a family and he's still married, there is this... Which I think all art is a feeling. It's based on a feeling, right?
100%. It's all emotions. That's that, and the most brilliant storytellers are the ones who know how to impact and touch every single emotion. Can make you frightened, can make you tense, can make you laugh. And just kind of know. And it's all timing.
Where did you grow up?
Where did I grow up?
Yeah.
You want the truth? I grew up in Florida. I don't like to say that.
Wait, what would be the lie?
Well, no, it's just I say Florida, people are like, oh.
Wait, Florida is a place that exists. We get
it does.
So my thing is, when did you because I imagine if you start off as
Yeah.
a producer in reality television, when did you fall in love with not the reality form, but in terms of film and media? When did you fall in love?
So the Florida part, I grew up about 45 minutes outside of Orlando. And when I was a kid, I was probably about maybe 8 or 9. I was at that super impressionable age. My son's the same age now. And that's when Disney MGM Studios opened up in Orlando, and Universal Studios was like, well, fuck, we're building a park too. And then it was like Nickelodeon's headquarters was, so I was like, Hollywood was coming to Orlando, and then it went to Albuquerque, and then it went to Atlanta. But like Orlando at the time in the late 80s, early 90s was like, that was Hollywood East.
Yeah.
And I became consumed by it. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is what I want to do.
You became consumed, realizing like, oh, these things are made by people.
This is just
you didn't want to be in it. You didn't want to be the actor in it. You realized this thing.
I wanted to be a storyteller.
Yeah.
I wanted to be. I idolized Steven Spielberg. I idolized George Lucas. I idolized my idols were weirdly like chubby guys with glasses and like it was like I didn't like.
Oh, dude,
I wasn't like Spider-Man.
I was a 12-year-old reading biographies about Alfred Hitchcock. You know,
and at Universal they had like the Alfred Hitchcock like
the Psycho stuff.
Yeah,
I remember going to Universal Studios Hollywood for the first time from Kansas, and I was picked to be in like one of the exhibits or like the things when
you're
you
like
sit,
you're like the boy.
I was the ET boy.
You're the ET boy.
And I remember thinking that I was discovered. I was like, I got discovered by Hollywood. Holy moly!
Right.
Like, it was such a big thing in my mind, and I was so in love with it because I grew up in Kansas. You know, this is pre-internet or just right on that cusp.
Right.
And all I had was television. All I had was if I could go to a friend's house and watch cable. So there was something so magical that a place like Hollywood supposedly existed.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you could move there. I thought you had to get a license to actually be in Hollywood, you know?
Absolutely. And fortunately my parents supported it. I think my dad was like, shit, I'm not going to get him out of this. I'm not going to snap him out of this to, he doesn't want to go like do insurance like the rest of the family.
And now you're telling people you work in an insurance on planes.
Just to blow, just because it's that exciting of a job. And so I actually started off, I went to Syracuse. I went to the Newhouse School, majored in television, radio, and film. And I started off actually in news in New York City.
Wow.
Because it was there. Most of my family's from New York. My parents were New Yorkers. And I just, after about a year there, I was like, I want to do entertainment. I really do want to do scripted. I really do want to do storytelling. So my dad kind of relented. He was like, fine, go. I can't stop you from going to California. So 2005, I picked up my bags, moved out here, and then all of a sudden I get my first job at E! Entertainment working on a True Hollywood Story.
Oh my God, True Hollywood.
Yeah.
Man, I spent so much time with True Hollywood.
Right.
Guys, there used to be a thing called True Hollywood Stories. It would be like an hour or 2 hours, and it would take you behind the scenes of something.
A documentary.
Yeah,
it was always like a celebrity, and then like about halfway through, it's like, and then things went for the worst, and it was like the bender that they went on, or like the drug, and then he tried to do a little uplifting ending, but that was but all of a sudden I moved from New York, where it's like I worked for Nancy Grace. In New York City. I was her production assistant. I worked at Court TV.
Patrick, get me my tea.
Oh, yeah. She was always sweet to me. That's what I always have to say. But also, like, Kimberly Guilfoyle worked there.
Wow.
And she was married to Gavin Newsom at the time. It was a weird place.
Yeah.
And so then I move out here, and then it's like, oh my God, Brittany and Kevin are breaking up. And I'm like, what is news anymore? But all of a sudden, it's like, hey, come to the summer block party. Summer block party. used to have that courtyard on Wilshire.
Yeah. And
they used to just open up bars, and like we had a private Kanye West concert where he this was back with good Kanye.
Yeah, I know. I remember the times.
Pre-crazy Kanye. And it was an amazing time. And then it's like, now I like fast forward to like the last show I worked on, where I'm trying to fight with like the line producer over covering our crew's $20 meals. They're like, well, the crew spent $21, so they're gonna have to give you $1 back. Or it was like, and it was like, how do we go from like stocked bars and Kanye West concerts to we could barely feed our people.
Yeah, I mean, Hollywood, it was a land of excess.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that, that was good, but it is gone, like the pendulum is swung completely the other way now.
Oh my gosh. I just remember the stupid LA stuff where it's like you go to a party and they're like, they personally flew these shrimp in from Louisiana. And you're like, okay, well, where else? They ain't coming from where else? I mean, most fish come from someplace different.
Like not Costco?
They're not coming from off of Catalina. So, but I mean, it's like, but I just remember it was always just like something like, oh, you got to do this. It's always big. It's always like splashy. But that splashiness, and that's what made Hollywood so fun. Those parties in like the 90s and early 2000s. And
then we fast forward, and I think it's so interesting that we really can market in a sense at the pandemic, is that is, and which, by the way, Patrick is saying the pandemic has created streaming. That is a quote direct. But
it fast forwarded streaming.
Well,
it injected a steroid into streaming.
And so then it becomes a completely different thing that we fully have never broken out of. Like, it hurt. Obviously, nobody was going into movie theaters. Mm-hmm. And then once the pandemic ends, movie theaters open back up, we're hit with the writers-actors strike.
Yep.
So it's like a double hit on top of trying to rebuild the movie industry.
Right. And that strike, I understand why that strike happened, because all of a sudden the streamers are like, well, we're not broadcasters, so we don't have to go by the broadcast rules. We don't have to do 22 episodes a season. We can do 8. And their logic behind it goes beyond sort of, again, the creator logic. Like Netflix is like, we look at all our shows that we have on our platform, and we figured 8 is the best number because that's the medium that everybody wants to watch.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with 22 episodes of Friends will get people to keep going over and over. Why? Because it's a great story and it's a great produced show.
Great cast.
It has nothing to do with this is the median number, but they decided that 8 to 10 was going to be their median number. So writers aren't working as much anymore. And all of a sudden, everybody's hiatus period, which used to be hey, I know I'm going to start working in March and I'm going to go to December, and that was going to be my work period, and I have 3 months off. No one could bank on that anymore.
Yeah. No, I was reading the oral history of the Sopranos.
Yeah.
And this is another interesting thing of something that got kind of started through Prestige Television and HBO, is that David Chase, the creator of the Sopranos, he went from we're not going on a regular schedule. I need to feel this. I need to really think that I know what I want to say in this next season. So they were taking, upwards of a year plus. And they even talk about it in this book of they had become families with the crew, but they were having to tell the crew hey, we do not know when David is going to be ready.
Yeah.
Go take other jobs. And I think the people at home, they don't realize, and some of them don't want to realize how the sausage is made, is that there is a crew of people. And now Los Angeles, this was filmed obviously in New York, but there's runaway production, or in terms of production just going down, which you talk about so much, as LA used to be this booming town that created film. And now you can get more tax incentives in New Mexico, Chicago,
actually
Albuquerque.
Mostly outside the United States now. Now it's like the U.S. is actually one of the only countries that doesn't have a national tax incentive program. Most every other country does. So that's why it's easy to go film in the UK or Ireland. But our country does it state by state. And our state tax incentives still don't hold a candle to what you can film in Canada or Central Europe. You got to remember, Thailand is 35 cents to $1. So, and they have production crews that...
And that's why the White Lotus has...
And that's why the White Lotus is filming there. But at the same time, it's the technology has come so far advanced that you don't have to come to LA to just get a sample of it. Anybody can learn to edit. Anybody can learn to shoot. The technology is there for everybody to mass produce.
Which is a great thing if you're an artist or you're somebody on the come up, right?
Yes.
Is that those tools are available for us.
I wish I had those tools.
Oh, could you imagine?
I had 2 VCRs and a camcorder.
Oh, dude, I used to edit things on 2 VCRs stacked on each other.
Play, stop, I fucked up. I got to rewind the tapes.
Embarrassing, yeah.
But the thing, and I have an editor friend, and he put it best where he said, my entire career is now a 12-year-old's hobby.
And they're better at it.
And they're better at it.
Yeah.
And actually, to be fair, I hired an editor. The last show I did, Fight to Survive for Roku, I hired an editor, and she was maybe 1 year out of college, and she was the best editor I had.
Killing it.
Killed it. Killed it.
and then it's like me, I'm learning, which is also, I want to point out, like, I love your social media. Like,
Thank you.
I'm comfortable talking on a podcast, but like you're out there with your face explaining some of the craziest things happening in the industry right now. And like, where was that decision to say, I'm going to start telling the people the story and I'm going to put it out there? And it sometimes, do you worry that it might risk your actual, like, getting jobs on shows because you're out there telling the truth? There is something radical about it, in a sense.
So funny you mentioned that. And you're absolutely right. Like, the greatest fear out of anybody who works in the industry is the blacklist, right? That you are ostracized, and when you're out, you're out. When I started doing the social media, for a while I had done some social media on just how unscripted and reality shows get made, and it was just more like an educational tutorial. But when things really started getting bad, and I was out of work for probably about a year, and I had most been out of work maybe 3 months. So a year was just unfathomable. Like, something's wrong, right? And around me, a lot of producers, I have a lot of friends that are executive producers, and we all play the same game, which is we don't show our cards. So it's like, hey, what you got going on? I got a few stokes in the fire, like we all bullshit each other, but it's also like, don't bullshit a bullshitter. I know you're bullshitting me and I'm bullshitting you. But eventually it got to a point where it got so bad, people started being honest, and they're like, look, man, I'm door dashing, and I'm dipping into my kids' college fund, and I have to sell my house and move. And these are people that were my mentors. These were the people that I went to go look for jobs from.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're an EIC, you're an executive in charge.
And you spent your life knowing, I want to do this.
Yes. And these are people that I've known for 15, 20 years, and at least they could be honest with me. And then it really started coming to a head when I started getting emails from very desperate people. And then when colleagues I knew 2 colleagues so far that have taken their lives. A cinematographer, and that it's just getting to a point where people really started. Let me back up for a little bit. When you enter this industry, and kind of I mentioned, from 9 years old, I wanted to be in it. And you work so hard, and you script. And I started out as a production assistant and worked my way up to showrunner, and it was a brutal climb.
You worked.
Your knuckles are bloody. You've been beaten. You may be missing an eye, but you got there. You finally get to the top, and it's a plateau, and it's like there's nothing here. And you take it so personally because you identify as that being part of you.
Yeah.
I work in this industry. What am I if there is no industry? And I had to separate myself from that. And I realized very early on that a lot of people were having the same problem that I was. I had gone through the grief process 7 years ago, and I kind of realized it when I was in it. I was like, I'm grieving. Because no one ever tells you have to grieve your career.
Yeah, right.
No one ever tells you. You're prepared to grieve your family members or people close to you, but you're never taught to grieve your career. And when I was like, I'm going through anger, I'm going through denial, and then I finally reached acceptance. And when I reached acceptance, I was like, you know what? My career might be over. I'm just going to, and with the help of my older brother.
You're just going to mention it all.
Yeah. My older brother is of course, he's such a provocateur. He's just like, well, you either go out with a whimper or you go out with a bang, dude, and I was like, well, fine. Okay. Well, let's detonate it. And I sat down in my car, and I was just so frustrated, and I just spoke from the gut and the heart, and I just put it all out there. And I was like, let it be damned, but this is what's happening, and people have to know about it. And all of a sudden, bing, 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 my phone's just going off. And what I had always been fearful of, I actually got a tsunami of support instead. All of a sudden.
So it's also that connection that we talk about.
The industry is a community, and finally everybody's just like, finally somebody fucking said it. And I didn't realize that everybody wanted to say it. It just took, it just takes one match to, to set the blaze. And I've felt nothing but compassion, support. I had an agent call me, a very big agent in the industry, and just to say, Patrick, what you're doing is special. He goes, when I first saw what you're doing, he goes, dude, I thought you were committing career suicide. He goes, but now I see what you're doing. And I had to volunteer for tribute because the job needed to be done.
And we're also going to drop you from the agency, Patrick, but we love what you're doing.
But even at that, I may not work for Warner Brothers or Paramount, but what I'm doing has earned so much respect from my colleagues. Because again, I'm not trying to bullshit anybody. I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm just trying to be like, hey, when you're a reality show producer, see, here's also a difference is a lot of people think that they hear producer and they think the guy in the big office, just counting money with a cigar, right?
Yeah.
And that's a movie producer. But unscripted producers, we're in the trenches. I am nose to nose with the crew. And you're
doing 12-hour days,
12-hour days
on
on set, and I'm working with everybody. I'm talking to my audio. I'm talking to my camera ops. I'm talking to my gaffers. And I know these people. I know their families. I know they're trying to put food on the table. These are blue-collar workers, and we're all trying to survive. And fortunately, we're doing a job that we love. It's hard as shit, but we love it so much. And at least if I could provide them information, because you're not hearing from the studios what their plan is. You're not hearing what is going on in the industry.
Because they don't know what the plan is.
They don't.
I mean, that's, I always think it's almost like, and Springsteen never set out to write about Hollywood, but it's in the land of hopes and dreams.
Yeah.
We all got into this with a hope and a dream, whether to be behind camera or in front of camera, but it's based on dreams because of something we felt as a kid watching this and wanting to be a part of it. And now we are in not the decimation, but I guess my question is, and are you good on time? Because I'm loving this conversation.
I got plenty of time.
Cool.
Plenty of time.
Is that I always will watch your stuff and I'll get scared shitless a little bit.
Sorry.
And I'll get sad because, you had a story about Panavision closing down their Hollywood offices, and Panavision is a historical company that made like the film, the cameras.
Cinematographers are crushed across the board. They're just like so many people have reached out and they're like, this is where I got my career started and this is how I fell in love with cameras. And what's interesting is like even the main news agencies, Hollywood Reporter, Deadline, they haven't picked up on the story yet.
Why do you think that is?
Well, probably because they're official news outlets, and meanwhile, my friends are the ones that actually work there, and they're like, "Dude, this place is closing."
But see, it's so interesting, and that's why independent journalism, if we want to call it journalism, is on the rise. You know, it's not the normal journalism that we're used to, but it is they're providing a service that sometimes these media outlets that are owned by conglomerates cannot provide anymore.
Right.
I keep thinking about Christopher Nolan accepting his was Best Director award. For Oppenheimer, and him saying, we haven't even reached 100 years in terms of film.
Yeah.
And he has this core belief that we don't know what this art form can achieve. Like, we are still in its infancy. And I listened to that, but also I just kept thinking about it weeks after going, nothing says that film has to stay around. Like Christopher Nolan has the luxury to shoot on film or to shoot on IMAX cameras because he's Christopher Nolan.
Yes.
Where are we going from here? Like, what is the positive? Is there a positive here?
There is a positive. There's a huge positive. And it's true. It's like what Christopher Nolan's saying is like, look, like nobody's making Renaissance style oil paintings anymore, but people still do art, right? So the fact is storytelling is never going to change. That's part of who we are as human beings, from telling campfire stories to cinema to, whether it is somebody just doing a podcast, like it's an innate sense of our being. So that's not going to change. The medium is going to change. And what's happening in our industry is right now we see a lot of decimation. There's a lot of smoldering ashes, but there is sort of this creator movement that's coming out of everything because the creators themselves are like, we want to tell our original stories. We don't want to make another sequel to another Marvel movie. There's so much to be told. And I guess we're going to have to do it ourselves. If we want to get the leverage back of our industry, why don't we create an indie scene? And that's what happened in the 90s.
Or even the Great Depression. You had so much art come after the Great Depression that, you were in such tough times that it inspired this wave of art.
And it kind of goes back to the theater model, what I was saying. Movies had their best years in the 1930s. That's when you had The Wizard of Oz. That's when you had Gone with the Wind. That's when you had these like amazing cinema. But at the same time, people were going to the theaters as a way of escapism. That was... And it was supposed to be cheap escapism. It's like,
but they couldn't be home in front of a television or their phone.
No, or the radio, or they paid a couple cents, and then it's like for 2 hours I could be whisked away and not have to worry about my problems. So we're, again, in a weird way, we're entering this recession supposedly. And you actually do, even in television, see that sway too. Like when it becomes harder times, you start seeing more escapism television. You start seeing more like game shows and people winning.
Yeah.
And like it's funny how much of a cycle it is that's actually attached to the economy and how the economy is doing. So, again, when a lot of people are out of work, a lot of people are struggling to find something positive in their lives. And trust me, we're going to start gravitating to a lot more positive stuff because for some people, a lot of things look very grim right now. Whether you're working, whether you are into politics, whether you're however you want to say you're living your life, like people want to gravitate to something that's just for a minute. I'm like, I just want to just veg out and I want to be entertained. And if we as creatives can capitalize on that, you got to remember, like, even though the people running the studios, they need the creatives to tell the story.
Yeah. Well, then that's the other thing that you talk about a lot is artificial intelligence, AI.
Yes.
You pointed out the Russo brothers who are doing the next 2 Avengers films, right? Mm-hmm. They just did a Netflix film, and they were saying AI is going to be continually used and used more. In fact, I have a writer-producer friend that, in this last writers' strike, they were fighting, the corporations are fighting for less writers in the room. Let's break up like the old-fashioned writer's room.
Yeah.
We have AI there. We don't need so many of you people there. And to me, that's just obscene, obnoxious, and insane because I just feel like that should just be a hard law. Like no AI when it comes to writing films or TV.
You know what? I struggle with this because the cat's out of the bag, right? Genie's out of the bottle. We're not putting AI away. It's here. Whether we like it or not. I do think AI can be a useful tool for especially for filmmakers. Like if they're trying to put a budget together, there's AI that can help do a movie budget. I don't necessarily have to find the movie budget guy. I could literally pop it into this machine and it can help. With the generative AI, that's, I think, what most creatives struggle with the most. But the more that I look at it and the more I see it, and you could generate these amazing images, but it doesn't mean shit if you can't tell the story that goes along with it.
Yeah.
Like, and that is one thing that I've always seen as a producer is like, you get a lot of cinematographers or aerial cinematographers. I got the greatest vistas and the most beautiful eagle shot, and it's all great. But if you don't have a story to tell it, it doesn't mean shit. And so I look at it the same way. It's like you still need to tell a story. You still need to be a storyteller at heart. You can have AI, and AI is a horrible writer.
I've tried. It really is not there yet, but I don't want it to get there.
You don't want it to get there, but still, like, AI still, the whole point of writing and telling movies and telling stories is it's supposed to be a reflection on humanity. Robots can't reflect on humanity. Humans can reflect
unless
on
there's
humanity.
too many robots, and that does reflect on humanity.
But the robots are only regurgitating what they know.
Yeah.
They're not creating anything new. They're creating, if they do create something new, it's
Have
based
you
on
seen
what they know.
Terminator 2, Patrick? We are, come on. No, I get what you mean. And that's, there is hope in what you're saying. And I do love that. I just think there is this overall confusion because we as an audience, we consume. Mm-hmm. We're so good at consuming. I am so good at watching television, Patrick. You wouldn't believe it. I can watch 9 or 10 shows in a day. My ass is so fat. It is like, I'm so good at this, and it is such a joy. And it scares me too because I'm like, where are we going from here?
But you know what? Here, I'll leave it with somebody explained AI, and I love this metaphor. But if you're looking at a person who has a fake eye and a real eye, which eye are you looking at?
The fake eye.
But I think there's a lot of truth to that. It's like when people AI is free for the most part. Like you could generate anything. So who's going to go see an AI movie? I'm not going to pay $20 to go see an AI movie if I knew it was generated by a computer.
But most people don't know. That's why the work you're doing is important. And that's why the reach is important as well. Because right now you have all these people in the industry watching this. But it's also gotten to me. And then this is why it's important to do shows like this so we can get to other people, And I think there is something, and I've talked about this in reality television terms of like, well, sometimes the audience doesn't want to know how the sausage is made.
Yeah.
I personally, the further I get into this, I geek out on it and I love it. And I notice little tricks. I was watching a horrible episode of Southern Charm this week and I noticed it was a really weak episode, but the music was so overpowering that I was like, oh, wow, it makes it feel like the apocalypse is happening.
Yeah.
And it was, you could just tell they're amping this music up because they don't have the content in this episode.
Right.
I geek out about that stuff, but I also have to realize there's an audience there that doesn't want to worry about the people behind the scenes. They don't want, and that's why even the lively Baldoni of it all is fascinating because we can't, I always joke with the audience is like, guys, this is not the first time somebody might have tried to take over a movie. That's an actor in a movie.
Yeah.
This is not like I've had stories since the 60s of people doing takeovers of movies that you don't hear about. What's fascinating to me about the Lively Baldoni stuff is that we're now getting like these massive dumps of emails and text exchanges of these things happening that the audience shouldn't be privy to.
But what's interesting is that is a battle that's trying to be fought out in the PR. That's a publicity battle that's happening. That's what they're trying to win the war over. Whose side is the audience going to be on?
Yeah.
So that's a different strategy. But
I'm saying at the end of the day, though, it takes away from the movie.
Yes.
Right. Like it ends with us. Nobody's thinking about it ends with us. They're thinking about Lively and Baldoni and Ryan Reynolds and those as actual people. Like Daniel Day-Lewis used to disappear in a character. He didn't do any interviews, and all you thought was like, I'm watching this dude. I have no clue. I think he's married and he has kids, but I don't know him. Yeah. And I can focus completely on him. The next time I see Blake Lively in a movie, I'm just going to be thinking, wow, I wonder if she tried to take this film over. Like it is interesting as an audience member. We're privy to everything now.
But also audiences are pushing away from the celeb factor. Like celebs, and I think this is a lot thanks to social media and instant information. But like, look at P. Diddy. What was P. Diddy back in 2000? He was, he was the creme de la creme of in terms of musicians. Now it's just like, geez, and this realism of celebrities and realizing that they're not, people that we need to put on the pedestal. Sometimes they say shit that you're just like, that's just fucked up what they're saying,
and it's also just downright stupid.
Right. And there used to be a little bit more of a filter before social media. Remember, it's like they would only talk for the few minutes on the red carpet, and they're like, I'm doing a few projects, and great seeing you, okay, bye.
And now we've got hour-long podcasts with celebrities.
And now they're doing they're doing Instagram stories, and they're just like, my hemorrhoids, and you're just like, I don't need to know about that. Like these people have become more real, and they've become more human, and I think people are starting to realize like, oh, these are not like movie stars. They're just
they're like, brands,
and they're brands, and who's giving and the people that are smart enough know how to protect the brand, like The Rock.
Yeah, I mean, The Rock actually has found a way. Even though to me his film output, even though I'm really excited to see the new one that he worked on with the Uncut Gems guys, right?
Yeah.
But for he does these movies that are they're usually very similar to each other,
right?
But he has a personality that he is able to leverage on social media that people love,
and he protects his brand. He's like, even Michael Jordan protected his brand. When he was playing basketball, he had a different dressing room than the others.
Yeah.
So it's like, but then some people are just like, whether it's wanting to be, we are in such this attention-driven economy where people are just trying to fight to like get that one headline, for the 1 week that they're going to be in it, that it's almost like there's a sacrifice of integrity in order to do that. And again, this kind of goes into the authenticity talk that we were talking about before. That's why people that tend to be more organic are actually trending more followers. Like there's like
so you're saying integrity and authenticity still matter.
I think if people can present their real authentic selves in a matter that doesn't come across as artificial or fake personalities. I'm not. This is who this person really is. Like a perfect example is Taylor Swift. Why does everybody like Taylor Swift? Because she's a little quirky, and she does. And I think that actually is a draw because she's not trying to be the perfected, solo artist, that can't talk to anybody and is a diva and is, and has the extremely long writer. No, she's Taylor, and she's in there and she'll talk to the audience and she'll make kind of quirky jokes. And I think that's again what her draw is. And I think that's what more people are gravitating to.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. A couple of other things you had talked about recently was that we had this film by the director of Parasite, which also won the Oscar, Mickey 17, Robert Pattinson. Warner Brothers releases this film.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited to see this film, which just came out a couple of weeks ago. I have not made my way to the movie theater, and it looks like I don't have to because
you can watch it on Hulu in like a few days.
They've announced a digital release that is coming up very soon, 3 weeks after it arrived in the theaters.
Yes.
Now, I grew up, reading everything about film that I could get my hands on, and The Godfather spent years in theaters. Jaws spent a year in theaters, and now we have these big movies by big studios spending 2 to 3 weeks in theaters.
Yeah. It's a catch-22, right? It's like, well, I need to release the movie to make money, but I also need something big on my platform to keep my subscribers. So it's robbing Peter to pay Paul. So if a movie is not doing well in the theater, of course, they're just going to throw it onto the platform as quick as possible. They're like, well, let's stop this bleeding that we have to do. So Mickey 13 did not make much money over the weekend. So that's why it got fast-tracked to streaming. And again, you got to remember these streaming platforms, like they still need to keep revenue up. They still need to keep subscribers. And in order to do that, they still have to put great content, whether that is a new movie or something, to keep their subscriber base. But at the same time, you're not making money unless your movie's in the theater and people are actually shelling out cash.
Yeah, I mean, they were arguing, I think, recently for a longer theatrical window.
Yes.
There used to be these things, you guys, theatrical windows, where it'd be like, it is 90 days, or sometimes it would be 6 to 8 months before you saw it on HBO or you saw it on Showtime, because they wanted to give it a life on the actual screen. They wanted to give it a life on video and DVD, and then it would go to television. And now we have shortened that to 3 weeks.
Right. Well, 3 weeks for this one particular film. If I'm sure if it was like Wicked.
Well, Wicked just came out this week on Peacock.
Right. But when did Wicked debut? It
was it like November?
Thanksgiving weekend. So it's been a
couple months. That's pretty good for
right. So that's that would be a typical theatrical release, but it also made a lot of money. Wicked had a great box office. So really it depends on the film, but again, like, a lot of the trouble that the studios are having are marketing budgets. That marketing these films costs more.
Yeah, people don't even realize they're spending $100 million in marketing.
Like the film will cost 150, and then they'll end up paying 200 million. So the Anora, that won the Best Picture, $6 million to make, $18 million to market it.
3 times the production budget.
3 times the production budget.
Wow.
And that for the Oscars.
That's insane.
And even the director came out and said, I made no money because I'm being told I have to go to all these events and they're not paying me for all this. So I'm shelling out money to go to these film festivals. And it's like, man, they're not even hooking you up with a room. Like,
I was in the press room at the Oscars when Mikey Madison came back after she won Best Actress, and first off, you're just struck by like how young she is, and what a big moment this is for her. But also just thinking about, she had this moment, this experience of filming Anora, where it seemed like this beautiful artistic experience for her, which lasted say a month or something, right? And then she has then spent a year and a half in promotion, in award shows, in all of these things to sell the movie. And that's the thing where you're like, damn, that's the part of the job that you don't think about when you're in high school wanting to be an actor.
And they're not getting paid for that.
Yeah.
They're just like, that's part of the gig. We already technically paid you, you just got to show up.
And by the way, it's also that thing with the influencers of like, well, she'll have a career now forever. Maybe. Mikey Madison already is booking her next roles. She's got a lot of offers out there. Her price goes up astronomically at this point.
Right.
So you're doing this work almost for free at a point
Right.
because it is paying off in the long run.
Right. But even look at like Brandon Fraser, he won the Oscar and he was just like, I'm still unemployed.
Yeah.
And
he's like, I had a couple scenes in Killers
it's
of
like
the Flower Moon.
everybody came back and they're like, well, we love Brandon Fraser. You deserve that Oscar. Yeah, we're not going to hire you on anything again because you played that fat guy in the movie. So and that's all you. But like what happened to Brandon Fraser? He had his comeback. That was supposed to be his comeback.
And we loved that comeback.
And
we were crying watching Brendan Fraser.
And then he disappeared again. Oh
God, okay. I know we're a couple of other things as we start winding down, which I do not want to wind down because this is just so fascinating to me.
We'll just have to do another episode.
That would be amazing. To bring back where we started, Apple losing $1 billion a year.
Yes.
Okay, so they have all of this product that they've put out there.
Yeah.
Most shows I've never heard of when I go to Apple. I know Severance.
Yep.
Loving Severance. It has my attention. I put my phone down like we were talking about.
Right.
Short attention, long attention.
Yep.
So I'm in. How are they losing $1 billion? Just because they are paying all of the money for all of these shows and not enough subscriptions are being sold?
Apple's a very interesting company because they are probably the cleanest brand out there, meaning like they will only greenlight the best of the best. They're only going to greenlight a show with Reese Witherspoon and Jennifer Aniston, as the two leads. Apple is a software company. It's not a TV company, and what we're starting.
And they have a $1 trillion market cap.
As far as Apple's concerned, all the TV is just part of their marketing budget. The whole point of Apple is to sell phones and to sell computers.
So in a sense, they can have this and it can lose money.
And you got to remember, Amazon's a retailer. The whole point of Amazon is not to get you to watch the Amazon Studio. That's a bonus to be part of their, Amazon Plus or whatever you want to call it, their subscription service where you could get the
Amazon
free
Prime,
delivery. Amazon Prime. So there's a method beyond the madness besides just the traditional economic model of we need to put this product, this television.
So they're thinking as a corporation, not as a movie television
right.
studio.
They're thinking of themselves as what is their brand first? What are the products that they're selling? Apple wants to sell you another cord to plug into your phone, or another pods.
You did it last week to me, Apple. Again, I had to get a new phone, and now it's a new cord.
And to be fair, we're going to see more of this. Like, look at Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A started its own.
Chick-fil-A has a streaming service?
Chick-fil-A has its own streaming service.
Wait, are you shitting me?
I'm not shitting you.
Stop. I was joking, and now you're... Wait, what?
No. Yeah, it's exactly... And they came out with it a few months ago. You go to any Chick-fil-A, you go inside.
Shut up.
You're
lying.
I'm not bullshitting you.
Why would I ever need a streaming service? I just need chicken. Why do I need a streaming service from Chick-fil-A?
You can sit down and it's family-friendly content that it's safe for your kids to watch. And you can just...
So it's like almost a middle finger to Disney Plus going, we'll be the real family-friendly streaming service.
We'll be the, I call it the Chick-fil-A family-friendly. There's Chick-fil-A family-friendly and Disney family-friendly.
Well, do you know what programming is on the Chick-fil-A streaming service?
It's like cows doing, making jokes. I don't know. It's like, it's not like, I'm not their core demographic, unfortunately. I can't even remember the last time I ate at Chick-fil-A.
You literally left me with a Black Mirror episode horror story.
But the thing is, you got to remember, commercials are dead. How fast can you hit that skip button on YouTube, right? When a commercial comes up, commercials don't work anymore.
Commercials on this show does. Sorry,
except for this
show, commercials work.
All the the products that Ryan sponsors, buy them all.
Quince.com.
But if you think about it, commercials are a dying brand. Also, commercial producers are suffering as well. But brands still want to sell their products. Tide still wants to sell detergent.
Which, by the way, and that's what I always tell the audience, TV was created to sell soap.
Yeah.
That's it.
Soap operas were there to sell soap. So we're going back to this traditional kind of model, but they don't know how to tell stories. So now brands are like, we want to do a full integration, but we don't know how. How do we balance making a movie about a product? But I think you're honestly going to see a lot more of this. I mean, you think of a lot of these big companies like Coca-Cola, they have their own media studios. Who's to say that any company cannot become a producer of content?
Yeah. Wow. what's your favorite movie?
It depends on the day. My favorite movie, just in terms of storytelling and everything, is like Amadeus.
Oh God!
So I know that's a creative.
That's not a geek.
But like 10-year-old Patrick, Raiders of the Lost Ark. You know,
Obviously,
that's always if that's on,
easy.
I will watch it. Yeah.
What is your favorite television show right now?
Right now, White Lotus.
Yeah,
Hands down, slam dunk.
And I also don't understand in terms like that is another show like Severance. I'll put my phone away.
Yep.
And it's sacred.
It's sacred, but it's good.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, people are like, well, you know, Netflix is trying to battle this like the two screen problems, which is like I'm on my phone and I'm watching the TV simultaneously. But you only do that when the product sucks. When the show's bad, then you kind of tune out. If the show's good, like a Severance or a White Lotus, you know, and that's what I'm saying. The magic of storytelling is if you know your audience and if you're a Mike White, who's a brilliant writer, you're going to captivate them.
Yeah.
You're going to watch.
And you'll go on that journey because you trust the artist behind it.
Exactly.
So White Lotus, do you dip into Severance?
I did dip into Severance. I started watching Severance about halfway through the first season.
Halfway through, how do you watch Severance from it? You got to start
because I have a
from the
5-year-old and a 7-year-old. Trust me, life.
Great.
You know,
Okay.
Bluey goes on, and then,
what's your
then I'm
favorite children's show?
fucked, you know?
Bluey actually isn't bad.
Bluey is a fantastic.
Bluey's
I
a
love
fantastic show.
Bluey is my go-to.
What? Okay, so first off, how do we support you? And also, what do you have coming up?
Okay, so I'm working with a company. I'm part of the company. It's called Share, and it's a platform that we created. You go to www.theshareplatform.com.
The Share platform.
The Share platform. And what it is so obviously we know our financial system isn't working, and everything is moving towards this creator economy. So how do we make it easier for filmmakers, for creatives to bring their projects, get funded, and also get distribution? And so we're creating a platform that's outside of the gatekeeping system where people could they could bring their movies and their projects. And I'm sure you've heard of Angel Studios.
Yeah.
So Angel Studios, they have 1 million subscribers. They call angel investors, where you can actually crowdsource your investment for the movies. And we're starting to see everybody doing this. Robert Rodriguez just announced that he's crowdsourcing his own movies now. Eli Roth just announced that he's going to be crowdsourcing his own movies. So we see everybody, like the big directors are already going to this model, but how do you create it where, you know, if I'm not a big director or I'm again, like, how do you get the next Christopher Nolan or the next Quentin Tarantino? They're out there. They're young and they're hungry.
Or even Kevin Smith. It doesn't have to be highbrow.
No.
Like, where do you get the next Clerks?
No, yeah. I mean, I love Kevin Smith because I'll start quoting Jay and Silent Bob. But exactly, you know, and even Kevin Smith is like he's been doing podcasts saying like, go out there, do it yourself. He goes, if you're saying fuck Kevin Smith and you could do better, he goes, do better, show us you can. And so our platform Share is a way again to break out of the system because there needs to be a new financial model in order for Hollywood to survive.
So if I am a filmmaker or a creative, I can go to this website, I can read about this and see if this is something that could actually help me with my vision.
Yes, you could put your project on there, and it doesn't matter what your project is. It could be a film, it could be music, it could be a television series, it could be a documentary. And what it does is it also connects you to other community members. So like maybe you might be a writer, and I'm like, I have a screenplay, but I need a director, or I need a cinematographer, and I need somebody who knows movie finances in order to get this done. It connects you with that community. So, because there's a lot of platforms that are out there that are like, Staff Me Up is a big one that production people will use. But again, you know, you send your resume out there and you don't know, you never hear back. This is actually more of a social media connection, but also what works as a platform to get people's actual productions going.
Okay, so that's amazing. And then in terms of you're out there, you were just at Sundance, you were out there. I mean, like you're out on the street. You're making these videos all the time. We want to follow you on all those platforms. But like, say, I don't know, Amazing Race wants you back. Are you going? I mean, like, are you just did a show on Roku? Are you still?
Well, that was 2 years ago. But yeah, I mean, I'm still. Look, here's the thing: is I'm a creator at heart. Like, you know, I love the social media stuff. And it's funny because it's two different types of brains to do social media and to do television. It's two different types of editing, two different types of styles. And knowing both really kind of helps my skill set and grow. But, deep down inside, like, I still want to do what I love. I still want to produce stuff. I did produce a pilot last month. I can't tell you what the company is, but again, it's a brand that is producing a reality show, not a network. This was outside, and I jumped at the chance to make the pilot because
if you say Chick-fil-A, I'm going to lose my mind.
It's not Chick-fil-A. Trust me, it's not Chick-fil-A. But I'll just say it's a financial tech company.
Got it. Sexy.
We made it sexy. Hopefully the pilot's sexy enough that it gets brought into a series. But all the projects that I'm looking at I'm dusting off my own projects, the ones that I couldn't get sold because of IP issues. And I can't tell you how many times I've gone to a studio or a network with a show idea and they go, "This is fucking brilliant. But do you have any IP attached to it?" I'm like, "No, I don't have, because I created this out of my own head."
Is there a way we can have a transformer in here?
Can you put a Smurf in it? It's like no. But I know I have good ideas that I want to get made, and I think we're just finally saying, let's just.
So you're out there fighting the good fight because you want the overall health of the industry.
We all love this industry. We love what we do. We love telling stories. And I think when a lot of people finally got to this point of like, well, I guess I'm going to have to pivot, and they're looking at what to pivot to, you go, is it better to pivot or just give it I'm just going to shoot my shot and do the one thing that I always wanted to do. I always wanted to make this movie, and within this level of disruption is opportunity. So fuck it, let's do it. And I think that's finally sort of the sentiment of the industry.
F it, let's do it. You guys, this is why I wanted you to hear him. I get really, we geeked out, which is what this show really is supposed to be, is a place to geek out. But I think it's important for you guys to hear this, and also creatives out there that are watching this. And if there are any younger people out there wanting to do this, know that your voices, there are a place where they can be supported, and that you should believe in your voice, strengthen your voice, and be a part of the way to fix these industries and to be able to tell your very personal story. So, Patrick Caligiuri, we barely had the tip of the iceberg, so hopefully you will come back, man.
I would love to come back. This was a lot of fun, Ryan. Thanks
Awesome.
for having me on.
Thank you.